Welcome to the Science and Paranormal with Dr. Yana and Dr. Elliot, where science meets the unexpected, where we delve deep into the mysteries that straddle the line between scientific inquiry and paranormal. Get ready for a mind-altering journey as we embark on this phenomenal discovery together on United Public Radio Network 107.7 FM.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Science and the Paranormal. Tonight I have a special guest. She's been with us before, Stevi. She does the podcast Truth or Demons. Hasn't released an episode in the last 3 months, though, so I'm a little disappointed there, but she's been a little bit busy, and she's going to fill us in on what she's been up to. Dr. Yana is out tonight, and we had a couple of our pre-recorded episodes playing there for the past couple weeks. Took a couple weeks off to do some research and get caught up on some other projects, but we're glad to be back live. And tonight we are broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network, the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 and 107.7 FM in New Orleans, and also on Roku TV. Stevi, what have you been up to?
I have been working my fingers off. My day job has been insanely busy, so I've been catching up on that. Now that it's mellowed out, finally, I am back to work on the podcast, and I will have episodes out by the end of this week, finally.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Which episode are you releasing, and what is it about? I
have a really good interview with a man named Brian McCauley that's going to be coming out. That's my next episode. And then I have a little bonus episode where I do a little bit of debunking with a very well-known paranormal investigator in the community. I'm going to work on a video that Dan Rivera put up. And it's really interesting one. I've got a lot of fun points to address for that. And then I'll finally get my Arnie Cheyenne Johnson case up. I've been researching that like super in depth. I've been talking with a lot of people. I've been speaking a lot with people directly involved. I've had a lot of anonymous information coming in, so I've been sorting through that too, trying to make sure I don't like share anything people don't want me to share.
That's great. We'll get to Arnie here in a minute. We'll keep everybody in suspense because that is the title of tonight's episode, The Devil Made Me Do It, which is the last Conjuring movie that was released. And we're going to talk about that case tonight. But there's something else going on in the paranormal community. You and I talked about it off camera there. What's been going on there with these two individuals? And tell me everything about them, because I'm out of the loop on this one.
Yes, I've been trying to keep up. Well, I've been so busy. I've been trying to watch like the different YouTubers that I really love that have been covering it. We've got like Mythos and Beardo Gets Scared and Side Eye Guy. They've all been following, and there's quite a few other ones. I hate to leave anybody out, but so the dilemma is about 6 months ago, Cody and Satori, they are investigators / psychic communicators with the other side. They claim to have a trick where they don't call it a trick, but they claim to be able to communicate with the other side by holding hands and then speaking with the spirits through knocks. And Satori will recite the alphabet, and then a knock will happen to indicate which letter to stop on, and they'll spell things out. And so this was really, really big about 6 months ago when the Sam and Colby Conjuring series was happening on YouTube, because Cody and Satori were part of that. And so a lot of people accused them of faking. A lot of people pointed out how they could fake it. Even a lot of people came forward and admitted that, yeah, they believe now that they're faking. So this happened 6 months ago. And just recently, 2 weeks ago, they finally addressed it after being asked about it several times. Like Project Fear had them on and they asked about it. They said, are you willing to take your shoes off, because everyone thinks you're doing this with your feet? And that's like reminiscent of the Fox sisters. And they even compare themselves to the Fox sisters. So that's kind of funny. But I guess they finally decided to do this, to do it barefoot, to have, they supposedly had unbiased people filming, and they also set up a 360 camera. And Satori is actually Jason Hawes from Ghost Hunters. That's his daughter. So he helped.
Okay.
He helped kind of spread this out there because he was also getting a lot of backlash from what was going on, and so he helped support Satori by showing the video. And then there was a whole bunch of uproar over the video because at first they put it up and then they deleted it immediately. And the reasoning for it was something about they wanted to make sure it was done right and everything was addressed. So, Jason didn't want anybody coming at him anymore with questions and such. He said, let them prove what they're doing and leave it at that. And there's still so much speculation because a lot of people said, it appears that they're in an upper level and they're kneeling on chairs with their feet in the air behind them and no shoes on. So this is to prove that it's not a noise that Cody is making with his feet, because a lot of the debunkers zoom in on his feet during their video sessions where they're speaking with the other side, and you can see him rocking, you can see the shoe moving or whatever. A lot of different debunkers point a lot of different things out that are pretty legitimate in my opinion.
Right.
And so them being barefoot was supposed to address this. And in my opinion, again, I don't think it was a good way to prove it considering they're in an upper level and it was like a barn, I think she might have said. But anybody anywhere outside of camera view and the people's view that are watching, that are supposed to be the unbiased viewers, could be making knocking sounds. So I don't feel like it was a true effort at proving anything. I don't know. It just felt really, I don't know. It didn't feel right.
Who did they have there, to kind of independently verify?
See, I didn't know. I didn't recognize the names or anything, so I wanted to look into that when I had some time. But they were supposed to be people that were not a fan either way, but were in the paranormal community. So I'm
And when
not
we
sure
say
if
paranormal community, are we talking about they're amateurs, or are we talking about these are scientific paranormal investigators?
I would say amateur. I would say amateur in the sense that they're not known from any direct organization or from any social media, like YouTube or anything, as far as I know. I didn't look into it. I didn't even check out their names. I don't remember their names. They're in the info on the YouTube video. But I've been meaning to look into that. I will, and I will address it. But I do want to do a deeper dive into that so I can see how legitimate they were as unbiased opinions and such. And Jason really wanted to emphasize that he supports Satori, but he's not getting involved. So
Interesting. Do they do it in the dark? Do they film it in the dark?
no. They had camera, they had flashlights on them, and I think some of the cameras had lights on them. And there were lots of different camera angles. They had their 360 camera, and then they had people holding their own cameras, and then they were panning around, viewing people filming, viewing them. It looked like they tried really hard. I didn't feel right about it. And there was a lot of comments about how the sounds could have come from anywhere, and it doesn't really prove anything. Oh, and they're very expressive. They always answer every time, and that's a little off as well, in my opinion.
Interesting. So you had mentioned the Fox sisters, which is really interesting because a lot of times when people research them, it always talks about them being from New York State, but they were Canadian, which I find interesting because I'm Canadian and from Sydney, Nova Scotia now, and that's where my organization, Paranormal Phenomena Research and Investigation, is headquartered out of. But the Fox sisters, Margaret and Kate, back in the 1800s, around 1848, actually, they were the two Canadian girls that had relocated to New York State, and they had started what's called the spiritualism movement. And like you said, they used to start by pretending to communicate with spirits from the dead, almost like your first kind of mediumship. And a lot of times they came under scrutiny for fraud. In fact, in 1888, Margaret actually confessed that some of the manifestations were hoaxes, admitting that they had produced the rapping sounds by cracking their toe joints. They later retracted that confession. But needless to say, the phenomena certainly spread all across North America and over to Europe.
It
And
did, yeah.
that was part of the reason how, organizations like the Society for Psychical Research and my organization, why we exist, is to investigate this kind of phenomena, because it is, very fascinating if somebody claims that they are able to do that. But back in those days when the spiritualists would do this kind of stuff, it would happen in the dark, and they would have assistants in the room. So there was a lot of kind of fraud and trickery happening. And when you were describing this scenario here with Cody and Centauri, it sounds a lot like back in the 1800s spiritualism stuff. So that's why I was curious if, when they tried to, with possibly good intentions, show everyone, what they're doing by having independent people there, but if they had somebody from the scientific community there to actually observe and examine it. But it doesn't sound like. I'll have to watch the video myself. I have seen kind of snippets of it popping up here and there on social media, but that was the first I heard of it. So do they do any sort of paranormal investigations, or is this literally?
Yes, they're contracted with the Conjuring House. So they sometimes do, like if people pay to come to the tours where they have the psychic investigators, tagging along, sometimes it's them. They helped out with Sam and Colby's whole Conjuring series that they filmed on YouTube. And that was really popular. It was extremely popular because one of the boys got really, I think it was Sam, got really, really emotional because he was led to believe Cody and Satori were speaking with one of his grandparents, and it really, really got to him. And then that's what started the whole thing, because he actually cried on camera, and a lot of people were upset because that Cody and Satori were messing with people's emotions at this point. And so people were pointing out, this is really cruel, like making him go through this when you're not really talking to his grandparents, because because he was saying that's my grandma's nickname. And it turns out it was easily found on the internet. All I did was Google the woman's name and you could find it. And the whole thing was, when you tour the Conjuring House, when you book, if you're a content creator and you book, I think if you're anybody and you book a tour, they take all your information. They want to know, you have to sign, fill out all this stuff. You put your name and all your info, all of that stuff that you put down, you can Google and then find your relatives and find information on you. And a lot of people were pointing that out and saying, that's how we know this is fake. This is really cruel. You shouldn't be doing that to these people. And so there's been a lot of that going back and forth, whether or not it's ethical what they're doing. And they say they want to help people. And there's even a scene where a lot of people speculate it was a scripted scene where Satori pulls Cody to the side when they take a break, and she says, I don't really feel good about this. What are we doing to people, kind of thing. And because that was addressed in another debunker's video, they're like, this is messing with people. If people are so sure that there's better happenings on this other side, what will that mean for them? And there's been lots of discussion in that direction too, and it's been all over the place.
Well, you brought up a great point. Anytime mediumship is involved, hopefully if they're reputable, they're following some sort of ethical guideline. Unfortunately, it's an unregulated industry, so there's no, governing body that you can make a complaint to, and they don't really have like ethical standards designed. I have heard from a few different mediums that kind of have their own code of ethics. So for example, if they see a loved one that is going to pass away, or that person that they're talking to possibly is going to pass away, they don't talk about that. They don't tell them like, hey, you're going to die of cancer in the next month or anything like that. They have certain respect and guidelines that they follow. Certainly, like you said, that does kind of open it up if you're providing all that information, and allowing them to do some research beforehand. I'm just thinking, for example, if you've got their names and you punch it in Google and they did have a loved one pass away recently, a lot of obituaries are online,
Yes.
and you'll see that pop up in the Google news feed.
Mm-hmm.
So, certainly then they'll know, oh, this person just had their grandfather pass away or their mother passed away, and you can play on that. It's the same as how I noticed a lot of mediums have now moved away from doing private readings to doing these group bookings at venues. So I'm starting to see all these different, and I laugh because, I have friends that send me these and they're like, have you heard of this medium? And they send it to me and it says like Canada's best medium, John Smith. And I'm like, no, I was like, I have not heard of this person. And I said, everyone says that they're Canada's top medium or whatever, right? But I noticed that they're charging, like anywhere from like $100 to $200 for this very large group. And they just kind of go around and they might pick like, 7 or 8 people. I've heard a lot of people that have attended this don't find it really, meaningful. It's not like having a private one-on-one session. And to me, from a parapsychologist perspective, it almost looks like a money grab because you're able to grab so much more money, rather than do that $100 an hour personal reading. You can only maybe fit 8 readings in a day. That's $800, but you're booking a venue, charging $200 a person, filling it with 200 people. That's a ton of money.
Also, that it was a major thing. Maybe the 80s, 90s time so the larger group of people leaves it. Okay, so the one thing, on one hand, they can have their fakers that they can plant in the audience. So they know who to talk to make everyone in the audience latch on and believe immediately. And then the second thing is, in a larger group of people, if you are the psychic and you say, oh, I'm getting a name, the name is John, you're going to have 3 or 4 people raise their hand saying, I know a John. So
they do a lot of cold reading. Like you said, they'll throw out generic stuff. I've even seen mediums. I got heat for this once, but people thinking that I was hating on mediums, but I'll go into some positive things about mediums here. But I do like to warn people that there are individuals out there that are taking advantage of people. But like you said, they'll say something like, you just recently suffered a loss. A lot of people have suffered a loss, like whether it's a loss of a loved one. But if you say no, I haven't actually suffered like a loss, and they'll say, well, did you lose like a pet, or did you lose a job, or did you lose out on a promotion recently? Oh yeah, actually I did lose out on a promotion. Oh, that's what it was. It was the loss of the promotion that I was picking up on. And then they'll kind of keep kind of delving into it. It's interesting.
Some of them are really skilled at that, building on the things, whatever they catch that the person agrees with, they just build on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes things sometimes they're really accurate. Like, for example, I was meeting with a medium about possibly consulting on cold cases because I have a background in homicide. I spent 8 years with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police on homicide. And she does kind of some work with the law enforcement every once in a while. But she said when she reports the information she gets, she doesn't find that they take her seriously because, like, she tells them that, she's a medium and this is the information she got. She doesn't know if it's accurate or not, but here it is. And she was wondering if I'd like to kind of help out because, if she was able to get the information, I could draft up the letter and talk about both our experiences. Hey, I'm a former RCMP officer. I did 8 years on homicide. I work with this medium. This is the information she got. We're giving it to you to check your file, do whatever you want with.
Yeah.
And as I was doing that meeting with her on Zoom, she said that somebody from my wife's side had kind of come in and was kind of interrupting her while she was trying to talk to me. And she said that that the person is a family member of my wife that is deceased, that my wife had to make a big decision fairly recently about switching jobs, and that she did switch jobs. And then now that she's in the job, she's kind of regretting it and wondering, if she made the right decision. But it's really rough right now, but just stick it out. She made the right decision. And
Aw.
so after the conversation, I actually talked to my wife, Sarah, about that. And it's funny because it was actually true. And she didn't post it anywhere. So what happened is in December of last year, she decided to leave the school board doing human resources and go to the Nova Scotia Health Authority to do human resources. And it was a tough decision for her, but it was a permanent full-time job. So that's why she took it. And she was finding it extremely rough at the time because she had to learn all the different side of, HR there. She went from being a specialist doing disability management to being a generalist and doing investigations and things like that. But she didn't tell anyone. She didn't put it on Facebook. She didn't change her LinkedIn, nothing like that. So nobody would have known that. It would have had to be like an extremely random guess. But she had provided enough information that it really got, Sarah curious. So then I actually went to book an appointment with the medium because Sarah kind of doesn't believe in mediumship, or she's skeptical of it. And so went to go book a session with her. And again, this goes back to ethics. The medium didn't want to charge me. She's like, she's like, my spirit guide's kind of telling me just do this one for free, whatever. So I booked the appointment, and Sarah had the reading with her. And that reading she found was not accurate at all. There was really no information that was provided that had any sort of meaning to her. So it's really interesting how mediumship works. Sometimes people can be bang on and accurate, other times they're not. Now, I have seen, with our own medium, for example, Jody in Paranormal Phenomena Research Investigation, she joined us recently, last summer, I believe. And the reason why she joined is because we had this investigation where items were appearing, and they were very strange because they weren't just appearing randomly. They were very symmetrical. And I had never seen anything like that before. At first glance, it looked like human hands had put it down. So I was thinking right off the bat, like, is this a fraud? Is it trickery? Somebody playing a prank on the people? I've got all these different options in my mind. So I asked the family, I said, would you be okay if we brought a medium, to your house? And they said, yes, absolutely. So my sister had kept talking about her sister-in-law, and she said, you got to talk to Jody. She's a really good medium. She's very accurate. So told her what date and what time and what location to come to. Didn't tell her anything else. Didn't tell her what type of case it was, anything like that. So when she showed up, the first thing she noticed as soon as she got out of the car, she had pain in her left side of her chest, and her arm felt numb. And it turned out the gentleman's father had taken a massive heart attack in the early 90s while he was on vacation and had died. The second thing is when she was doing a survey of the land, she was in the shed, and she said that there was an item in the back corner, and she picked up a tape measure, and she said, it belongs to the male energy that I'm feeling in this house. So we asked the homeowner, outside of Jody's audio perception, does this item have any meaning to you? And he said, yeah, actually, that was my dad's tape measure. Okay, that's interesting. So she's got two
Did I
kind of
lose you?
two kind of hits. Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
So it kind of had like, two hits there. And then the third thing that happened is when she came into the house, she said she was having trouble standing on her left leg. She felt like she was uneasy or kind of out at sea, is the way she described it. And we found out that the homeowner's mom had to have her left leg amputated because the circulation had stopped in it. And she had just recently passed in January. So that was interesting. Then the fourth thing that happened is the homeowners had said a couple weeks before we showed up, they were playing cards. And I think it was the 6 of spades had gone missing. And so we gave the deck of cards to Jody and said, do you notice anything about these deck of cards? And she said, yeah, I see the 5 and the 7 of spades. So she had the 2 cards on the outside, of the card that was missing. So that was really interesting. And then the last thing that happened was when we were trying to connect with the male energy, she was asking what the dad's name was. And I was the lead investigator on the case, and I didn't even know what the dad's name was. And so she said she could hear a p sound. and she said his name's Peter, and the son said, "No, it's not Peter." And then she picked up the tape measure and she says, he says his name's Paul. And that's what it turned out to be, was Paul. So after having all these different, some people would call it coincidences, but we were able to verify it, with the homeowners. It really, piqued my interest in her ability. So we asked her to become part of our organization. So I have seen, some accurate mediumship perform, but yeah, certainly there's all kinds of factors at play. There's some people that are out there, I think, profiting off the ability. There's some people out there that they might have a good day where they're accurate. They might have another day where they're not so accurate, and then you've got ones that are just really, really tuned into that skill set, and they're just able to perform whenever they do.
Yeah.
So it's
I think that's one of the biggest. Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest hangups for everyone with Cody and Satori is how often and how frequent, so pretty much every time they join hands and say, okay, we want to communicate with you. I haven't seen a time on video. I mean, if it doesn't happen, I'm sure they probably wouldn't film it and put it up, but all their videos that they put up, it's very responsive activity. It's almost like it's a gold mine for any investigator to be able to speak to someone every single time you ask and to get very clear responses. It's really frustrating because no one else is getting that kind of response and that kind of engagement. It's really interesting that they would be so bold. It just feels like it's fake. I don't know. It always feels off to me.
Very interesting. I'll have to, after having this conversation with you tomorrow, maybe I'll have to watch the video there and see what some of the people are saying about it. Like I said, it's popped up in my feed, but I just haven't looked into it. I guess I do purposely try and stay away from the TV personality stuff. I've tried to watch some of the shows, and I can't bring myself to watch a full episode. There are the odd shows that I'll watch. I love Unsolved Mysteries. I find that the new Unsolved Mysteries has really kept the old Unsolved Mysteries
I agree.
Theme, because what they're doing is they're just putting a camera in front of somebody. They're telling the camera their personal experience. Then they throw in a little bit of reenactment to kind of make it entertaining. And then they may have an expert come on and comment on what that person experienced. I like that. I find it's more realistic. Unlike, some of the ghost hunting shows where it's every corner they're turning, people they're scared and they're finding stuff all the time. I know from personal experience, dealing with the networks, that they look for certain things. And one thing I was told by one of the TV networks was that they want to scare every 3 minutes.
Yeah, you had mentioned that to me, and I found that really interesting.
Yeah, that does not happen in paranormal investigations. No. There's lots of times we go in and absolutely nothing happons, and waste 12 hours. I understand that they can't put that on TV because no one's going to watch that, but come on, and I was proud though. I usually canvass people when I do public education events about whether or not they think the stuff on TV is accurate, and most people actually say that no, they don't think it is. So I am glad that most people look at it as almost like a para entertainment.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah,
let's Netflix and chill and throw some crappy ghost show on or something.
Exactly. Yeah, some of the debunkers like to look at it that way. It's just entertainment, but they still like to point out why it's entertainment. So.
Yeah, and I mean, there is the odd person that thinks it's real, and unfortunately, I've had people say, "Oh, I learned everything I know off of the ghost hunting shows," and I had one person argue on
I lost you again.
Oh no, did you? I don't know if it's my connection or what. It could be, because I am broadcasting from a hotel tonight, so it could be the hotel connection. But yeah, no, it's just I don't know. It just I can't bring myself to watch those shows. So
yeah, I found them entertaining before they got so how comedy can get too big. It's almost like they're stunts got too big and too outrageous, and it wasn't entertaining anymore.
Yeah, for sure. Like I think it's like you said, it's kind of worked its magic now. You know what I mean? Like we've seen it multiple times. All the shows are the same now.
Yep.
Yeah, we need some new
And I think
paranormal
that's
content.
why, yeah, and I think that's why the YouTubers do so well, is because they're kind of piggybacking off the TV stuff, but adding this more it's real element to it, because they're handheld cameras. They're sharing what they're experiencing in real time, or whatever. A lot of them edit, but like they're saying it's their experience in real time, and it like piggybacked off and advanced that content that we used to watch. So I think that's why it's so popular.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that. Um, Tell me about your work with. We won't leave people hanging any longer here, but tell me about the work that you've been doing on the last Conjuring movie that they made called "The Devil Made Me Do It." Tell me about the real case and some of the stuff that you've actually uncovered, and then let's talk about what was accurate in the film and then what was not accurate.
That sounds awesome. So yeah, it's a story that starts with the possession of a little boy. A lot of people don't realize that. I think when they hear about Arnie Cheyenne Johnson, they just think he was possessed. But it did start with his girlfriend's little brother, whose name is David Glatzel, and he experienced possession after Arnie and his girlfriend Debbie, David's sister, wanted to rent a home, and they were moving in with David's mom and with Arnie's mom and his younger sisters, and then Debbie was going to move in too because there was more space. It was closer. It was this big deal about how convenient, how nice it was, and they were so excited. And on move-in day, David had an experience in the house while being alone in a room with a waterbed, and that's like a big scene in the movie. This is supposedly where it started. He said he was pushed. He said then it followed him home. He could see it all the time. He ended up referring to it as the beast, and then it in turn began possessing him. And it didn't take long before the Warrens got involved. With the Warrens, it's always, I know somebody you should, get in touch with, and then that happens to be the Warrens. So it's these people with the word of mouth and suggesting, hey, these people might be able to help you. So Warrens come. They deal with the possession of David. Arnie is around for all of it. Several times, Arnie supposedly challenged the demon in David, saying, leave him alone, take me on instead. Lorraine emphasized how dangerous this was, and he shouldn't have done it, and proceeded to tell people this is going to lead to something bad. She's even said to have told police that she knew something bad was going to come of this, but she didn't know what. A police officer said that Lorraine mentioned a knife would be involved, so that was a very accurate guess on her part, like a premonition, I guess you would say. And then
Premonition, yeah.
Yeah, and then so 6 months after they didn't successfully exorcise David. They made a point of saying that they didn't get rid of it; it just went kind of dormant. And then 6 months later, Arnie supposedly suffered the possession, a transference, and he then stabbed a man and killed him, and claims he has no memory of it. And the Warrens immediately jump in and say, we will help you with this. This is the defense of demonic possession. We intend to testify to that. And then the lawyer presented that to the judge. The judge said, no way, not in my courtroom. This is not a legitimate defense. You will not use this defense. And then it became a defense of self-defense. He was defending, there was a law that they brought up where, so they claimed that the man Arnie stabbed, this man named Alan Bono, had a hold of his younger sister and wouldn't let her go, and he was extremely inebriated. And so the law states that Arnie was defending her, and that's what his charge should be. If anything, if he's not found not guilty, it should be manslaughter instead of murder in the first degree. So when it came time to decide on his case, the jury decided that he was guilty of manslaughter, and the judge gave him the max, the 10 to 20 years. And then he only served 5 on good behavior, and he got out and is out still and talks about it all the time.
Yes, I saw the Netflix documentary called Devil on Trial. I thought it was really interesting.
That was a really good documentary.
Yeah, it was really, really good. Anyone that I'm not sure if it's still on Netflix or not. If it is, I encourage our listeners to watch it. It was really good. It was called Devil on Trial, and I had seen, of course, the movie because personally I'm a big Conjuring fan, and I've seen all the movies and find it really interesting. And some of the cases, like you said, are based on real cases, and then of course dramatized for Hollywood. I found the Devil on Trial documentary interesting because everyone, for the most part, on the Ernie Johnson side of the family, all kind of said that the phenomena was real and that the possession was real. But there was one brother, I think, related to Ernie Johnson that basically came out and said that he thought it was all nonsense. That they talked about how the one night when Ernie was kind of having a flip out there from the demon, that he was like in a possessed state, that the father got really upset and kind of grabbed him and kind of manhandled him a little bit, and he kind of snapped out of this this possession. So the brother was having trouble saying if it's a demon being controlled by the devil and all this stuff, how could my dad just grabbing him kind of stop the demon? But I thought that was really interesting. Have you I know you said you're getting ready to release an episode on your podcast about this. Did you manage to track any of those people down and interview them? And
Yes, I have spoken with, so I probably won't be able to speak with Arnie, so I didn't reach out to him. He is very, very, very good friends with Tony, and Tony is not my biggest fan. So I didn't try to reach out to Arnie. I knew it probably wouldn't lead anywhere, but I did get to speak with Carl, the brother who does not support this or believe it was a possession. And
interesting.
he had a lot to say on the documentary, as that on its own. But then when I spoke to him, he shared a lot with me, and we're actually working on, because he did the documentary, he's not allowed right now to just come out on other platforms and talk about things just because he's not sure where they're going next with anything. So we're working right now together for him to share what he can with me, and I'll put that in the episode. So I'm excited for those little tidbits he said I am allowed to share. That'll be really fun. He's been really great to talk with. He has of course a lot of firsthand accounts, and it's interesting that he brought up that story about his dad coming in and just shutting it down, because I re-listened to the audio book today, and there's a part in it where they actually wrote in the book that David, the dad, came out and tried, and to no avail. The demon just spat at him and cursed at him and everything. And then the biggest, it kind of makes me giggle that there's so many discrepancies in the book, because the story is supposedly told by the writer was a horror writer, and Ed told him, as well as another writer, there's a whole other case where he said the same thing, but he told him to just make it scary. Like, people come for the scare, so just make it scary. So all these add-ins and stuff, and then for Carl to say that, and then for me to talk to him, and then for me to do the research on some of the stuff that was said and some of the things I've been told, it's really interesting to see a lot of parallels with this book and other books and other stories, and how they're trying to make it so big and dramatic. And it's like the recordings. That was one of the things I wanted to bring up. If you listen to David's, because the Warrens told Judy Glatzel, David's mother, to record everything, document everything, write it down, record it if you can, audio, video, whatever you can do, take pictures. Right. Highly encourage this. All of the stuff that they've shared sounds nothing like, first of all, the way the book depicts it, and second of all, like any other possession recordings I've heard. It sounds like a little boy having a heyday with some curse words and some funny voices.
Interesting. I also think the documentary talked about what happened between the Warrens and their mother about
Mm-hmm.
film rights and some money.
And money.
Can you
Mm-hmm.
go into that for us?
Yeah. So in most cases that I've researched so far, is a common denominator of the Warrens telling the family or the person with the issue, we can make you a lot of money. If you let us tell your story and get it out there to the world, and they say it in a way that makes the person feel like telling their story will help them. It's they throw in the money making part, but they're trying to butter them up in a way that's like, people got to hear your story. If we get this story out there, it'll help other people like you. It'll be really good for everybody. Plus, it'll make you a lot of money. So that's what happened with Judy. When they came in, when they initially contacted Ed and Lorraine, they came in and sat down with Judy, and Judy explained, I think my son is possessed because of this, this, and this. And the things that were happening thus far was just David said he saw a demon. David said the demon pushed him. He didn't use the word demon at the time. He said, he was saying like a ghost man. He was saying the beast. It referred to itself as the beast. And a lot of the stuff that was being said was not your generic possession stuff. But then the Warrens come in and they tell Judy, all right, now you got to document it. This is what's going to happen. And then he feeds all this stuff to Judy with David in earshot. So he's
Right.
telling Judy he's going to start cussing. He's going to start spitting. He's going to start like doing all these things. And Carl's the one who pointed this out in the documentary, saying it didn't take long for David to completely soak that in and put it into action. And then he started doing word for word what Ed said he was going to do. And Judy filmed it all. She recorded it all. She took pictures. And there's an audio of her screaming at him and him screaming back at her. And it just, to me, it just sounds like these people need different kind of help.
That's interesting. We just had one of our listeners comment. Gloria says, I feel that the way that they made it more scary made it less scary and took away from the actual story.
Yeah, I agree. It made it fanciful and far-fetched.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I thought the part about the money was interesting because it's funny. I remember when I first got into doing paranormal investigations, it was back in like 1996. I got invited to my colleague, Dr. Daryl Walsh's Center for Parapsychological Studies in Canada. And I remember them talking, making jokes. They would always say, well, we could be like Ed and Lorraine Warren and there's a demon behind every corner or some sort of comment like that. And I never thought anything of it until like years later when I started to become interested in demonology and started to research it. And came across the work of Ed and Lorraine Warren and actually looked at who they were. And like you said, in the media and the books, they're portrayed, very romantically, a couple that works together, you get one that's a medium, one that's a self-taught demonologist, do all this great work, help people, never charge people for any money. But then when you start digging into stories like what you do, and like I've told you before, I think I even told our listeners before, you should have been probably an investigative journalist because you have that drive where you just dig and dig and dig and you find like some great stuff, and you've interviewed some great people. Like you've tracked down Carl, and before we've talked about how you've tracked down the reporter that reported on the Annabelle doll. Like that's amazing to track those people down and interview them. A lot of people wouldn't go through that. But I found it very interesting when I started to talk to people that had worked with Ed and Lorraine Warren. I've heard stories about how they would push out other paranormal investigative teams, that they basically wanted to be the only people involved in the investigation. I've heard stories about them, I don't want to say ripping people off, but like basically monetizing on their story. And then once this documentary came out and basically had, the mother say, yeah, they promised, they were flying me to meet producers, and they were talking about how big this is going to be and how much money is going to be. And I think she made like 20 or 30 grand or something off of it.
Yeah.
And
So
most of it went to the Warrens.
Yeah, I forgot that's what you asked. I get so, like, there's so much, I get so lost in it. But yeah, there's actually a recording in the documentary where Judy calls Lorraine specifically to ask about the money. She's like, she answers the phone, and there's the pleasantries at the beginning, but you can hear the tone in Judy's voice that she is starting to get concerned that she's not seeing any money. And she says to Lorraine, how's it going over there with everything? We need the money just like you do. She said verbatim, we need the money just like you do. And Lorraine's like, oh, honey, it's all good. It's great. It's going wonderfully, and doesn't answer her question. And then there's another part where they call. That's right. That's right. The Warrens come over to discuss the movie or the book rights. They want to discuss how the money is going to get distributed, and they're going to sit down with Judy and tell her everything. And Judy says, well, don't I need a lawyer for this? And
Yes.
Lorraine says, oh, no, we've got it. Don't worry about it. And so that's, if they were really helping, they would be like, yes, get a lawyer, make sure you're comfortable, make sure you understand what
Yeah,
we're
you have
doing here and
nothing
what
to
you're
hide.
getting.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it was very shady, in my opinion, how they dealt with that. And it's not the only time I've heard that they shortchange people. They're not upfront about how the money's being made and where it's going and where it's coming from.
Yeah, and Gloria made another comment just saying she didn't see the documentary, but she will, and that she agrees when you actually look at some of the deeper stuff that Ed and Lorraine Warren did, it becomes very disappointing. They're not, the Patrick Wilson and the Vera Farmiga
Yeah.
romantic Hollywood kind of couple. That there was, there was some shady stuff that went on from people I know and have personally talked to, and then obviously people that you've personally talked to as well. So
Yeah.
very
And what's
interesting.
really interesting, I was gonna say, what's really interesting to me is with all the people that I've talked to, I've discovered it's a very 50-50 opinion of the Warrens. I've got people saying that they were shady, that they can confirm that they were greedy, they can confirm that they were underhanded, that they faked things, that they embellished things. But then I have several people saying how giving they were, how kind they were, how they do anything for you. They take you under their wing, and you're like, you belong to them, and they're, give you the shirt off his back for anything, according to, like, for Ed. And like, lots of people loved him. And it's interesting to me that people can be both, and it's so easy to switch back and forth.
It is. Yeah, it's very disappointing because when I was reading all their books and learning what they had learned, I thought their work was very fascinating. It sounded like they were doing really great work, and then to find out some of the other stuff that was going on, it was quite disappointing. But that's how the business works, I guess. There's some people that are in it to legitimately help, and then there's others that try and line their pockets if they can as well. And unfortunately, it sounds like that's kind of what certainly happened in this case for sure. Because I know that in the documentary, the mother was quite upset that basically Ed and Lorraine Warren had mostly profited off of this incident and not her. The other thing, when I look at this from doing paranormal investigations, is that is a red flag. Is if the family is calling and wondering like, hey, how's the chat with the producers going and how's the money coming line?
They should be kept informed.
That to me is a huge red flag. I think even just for the attention, like, is the family just seeking attention? Like, did they just need the money? Are they?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Are they dramatizing everything that's happened? And you also made a good point about David overhearing conversation, because I had a case, probably the only demonic case that I investigated, the first book that I wrote, Evil in Exeter, and it had kids involved, and a lot of times the kids were not present for those conversations, and the family didn't talk about religion and things like that. So when certain things would happen, like the child would start talking about Jesus and that he could tell which items were blessed from, and he'd say it's from the church. Like, he was using language and things like that he wasn't schooled to use. So it made it more legitimate, which that's stuff you should look for. We're at the top of the hour already, so we're listening to Science and the Paranormal, broadcasting live from the United Public Radio Network, UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 and 107.7 FM in New Orleans and on Roku TV. Special guest tonight, Stevie from the podcast Truth or Demons. Sometimes it's more truth than demons, but that's why she investigates. Couple of announcements too I'd like to make. The 2024 Halifax Paranormal Symposium is coming up. We're hoping actually to have, for any of our listeners out there, to actually have Stevie come to the event. She's got a ticket, and travel plans are in the works. She's coming from Tennessee, so far away, but she may actually be making an appearance. Yeah, the hotel I'm at right now actually is where the conference is going to be held. I'm
very cool.
Broadcasting from the Halifax Tower Hotel and Conference Center, which is one of our gold sponsors. And tickets are on sale right now if you go to ppri.net/tickets. And we have a bonus actually this year. So if you buy a ticket to the Halifax Paranormal Symposium, your name will automatically be entered into a draw to win 2 tickets to the Shag Harbor UFO Expo Conference Day, which is going to be held September 28th, I believe. It's a Saturday. They have 5 guest speakers all talking about UFOs, and the ticket value, I think, for that is like $360. So awesome opportunity. You buy a ticket with us, you have a chance to go to 2 paranormal conferences. So anyone that's interested in that, go to ppri.net/tickets and get your tickets now. The other announcement I'd like to make, obviously, is if you're listening to us, make sure you give us a like, follow, subscribe, share, comment, because that helps support us and, helps us keep track of our listeners. And we love to converse with, our listeners. We get some questions. And speaking of questions, if you have any, you can always email Dr. Yana and I at scienceandtheparanormal@ppri.net. So, Stevie, what else is coming up on your podcast?
I'm working on a lot of bonus stuff. What I really want to do is, after I do the Arnie Cheyenne Johnson case, there's a lot of elements in this case that bring up a lot of questions, and I want to address some of them. Like, for instance, so in the movie, they depict the reason for this possession, this witch. This witch has cursed David's family, the Glatzel family, and that's why he's under possession. And they find the witch, they put a stop to it, and it's all done. So in the book, it says there was actually a family that cursed them that practiced Satanism. And that got me thinking, from what I know of Satanism, there's nothing in it about cursing people. So I would really like to do some bonus episodes that address the facts and the building blocks of Satanism, the facts and the building blocks of demonic possession, of exorcism, because the book talks so much about all the different types of exorcisms that were performed on David because they could not get approval for the ritual Romani, or however that's pronounced. I have trouble with that one, but it's the biggest, most main exorcism that has to be approved by, the highest up. And since they couldn't do that, they discuss all these minor exorcisms and what they're called and stuff. So I'd really like to dive into those and present that information for people, because in my opinion, Ed was going off of things like The Exorcist, the movie, because he even went around telling people that he worked on that case. And so a lot of the stuff that happens to David really mirrored Ed's knowledge of that case. So I thought that was interesting. So I'd really love to just do some episodes that focus on that. So when I go into the next case, which I think is the Smurl case, people will have a better understanding of what's going on and how it's actually supposed to be addressed.
That'll be really interesting for sure. That'll be a great episode.
I got lots of bonus ideas in mind. I think I'm going to take some time and record a bunch of them so I can release them so there's no gaps in time again like I've had this last 3 months.
Yeah, it's tough for sure. You work full time, and I know you had a couple other kind of projects I saw on Facebook
Yeah.
that you were doing. I think did you design a wedding dress or did you model a wedding dress?
So one of my friends, I actually met another pair of podcasters a couple years ago called, the podcast is called Creeps and Crimes, and it's Taylor and Morgan. And Morgan had put out on social media that she needed a dress altered. And did anybody know anything about sewing and could they help her? And I noticed that no one had offered any help. So I thought, oh, I'll throw my hat in the ring. Maybe she'll, think she'd like to work with me. And she loved the idea. What her project was is she got married this last weekend on the 20th. Congratulations to Morgan and Aaron. But they got married, and she had her wedding dress that she was going to wear for her ceremony. But her mom's wedding dress, she wanted to do something with it, but she didn't know what. It was a 1980s dress with the big traditional poofy sleeves and all the sequins and beading and stuff. And so she brought it to me, and I completely disassembled it down to its pieces and remade it into a whole new dress that was like a more modern style with all the original pieces though. So I did that for her, and that took me quite a while because it was a full wedding dresses, like all the beading, all the layers and the tulle and so much to it. And it was really a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. I'm a seamstress for my profession. So the side jobs that I do, like dress alterations and stuff, I just love that so much. It's so fun for me. And then she was insanely excited. And it's like you send your little baby out into the world and watch it bloom. And just her excitement it made my day.
That's awesome. That's great. And no, like you said, it's just so time consuming when you're involved in multiple different projects. Like I said, with our podcast, we had some pre-recorded podcasts because, Dr. Yana and I had to get caught up on some other parapsychological work, and it's just hard finding that time sometimes. And, I'm still trying to write my 4th book, and I've got a couple stories written in it so far, and it's just so hard to find the time when you're involved, and then people contacting you and requesting assistance and doing investigations and things like that. But I've been keeping my eye out for those episodes because I know they're always good, they're always entertaining, and I think you should keep doing it for sure.
Thank you. I plan to have some more guests soon too.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome. No, I think it's good. It's something people look forward to. What's the latest with NESPR, New England Society for Psychic Research? What's the latest with them?
So we were having quite a mudslinging battle there for a minute. After I did my Annabelle Part 2, where I debunked Dan's motorcycle story about witnessing the motorcycle accident and stuff. I completely debunked that. It's not a thing. It did not happen.
Yeah, we covered that. We covered that in our last interview with you, and all the research you did into it. And the road wasn't even open at the time when the accident happened. Yeah, very, very good journalism.
Yeah, and that really got under their skin. There was a lot of Facebook activity. It cracks me up kind of because between Tony and Dan, they post a lot of juvenile high school type posts where they're slinging mud on the internet, and then anytime someone else would retaliate or say anything, it just became this full-on war of comments and meme sharing and making, and it got really interesting. And then Dan went as far as to do a live Facebook Live where he addressed it. He was very adamant about letting everyone know that he, quote, gave no fucks, was the quote. He repeatedly said that for the whole live, and even decided to make merch that says it. And we clearly struck a chord, me and my guests, and the discussions we've had. Then they decided that it would be a good idea to make a podcast. So now NESPR has its own podcast, and I have not listened to the first episode yet. I plan to. I'm curious to see what they talk about and everything. And it's interesting that my little podcast has ignited so much in them, because now they also have, in addition to their Paracon, they have the Devils on the Road tour, where they have decided to take the haunted items from the Warrens Museum on tour and subject the whole world to their evil. I can't take that
Yeah, and
seriously. I can't.
I
It does.
I did notice that. I did notice, it went from a couple years ago when they started the Warren Con. It went from having guest speakers in the paranormal, mostly TV personalities, though I did notice that.
Mhm,
Um, speaking at the events, to now it seems very like commercialized, almost like a sci-con kind of thing, where it's
mhm.
or a sci-fantasy kind of thing, where they're having actors and actresses involved in like horror movies come now. And yeah, I don't know, like you said, it's kind of becoming more commercialized. And
Mhm.
I don't know, I don't see them putting out like any kind of actual education information. I don't see them doing any investigations or putting out any investigational information. It seems to be
Yep.
more centered around commercialization now.
Yep. There's a lot of talk about them being, well, how they should just admit that they're entertainment now. They're no longer an organization that does investigations. They are purely paranormal entertainment.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that if that's the route that you're
Yeah,
choosing to go.
exactly.
Yeah,
If you can admit that's what you're doing too, like it's fine to make it entertainment. The movies are clearly adored, and that's fine. And it's just really frustrating that they go forth and say things like, if you do this, you're going to get possessed, and try to make it serious. It's really frustrating to play and entertain and then turn around and say, but you'll get possessed.
yeah, and you've made a good point. I think in the last episode we talked to you about how they talk about how dangerous Annabelle is, and not to handle her, and not to look at her, and not to antagonize
Yep.
her, but yet they'll fly to Las Vegas to go, meet a TV star on a certain network and
The
certain
most
ghost.
antagonizing of ghost hunters.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I know it's interesting. It's like you said, they've kind of lost that respect. Now, do you think overall, like Ed and Lorraine were good people that had good intentions, that did some good work, or do you think all along they were all about kind of like building their name and their legacy and making money? Like, what's your thoughts on them overall?
So through this journey, if you'd had asked me that a year ago when I started this, I would have said I think they're 100% frauds out for money. End of story. But through my interviews, through my research, I honestly believe they can be both and were both. I believe that there was there was a genuine side to them, that was overtaken by fame. Like, it's a very common phenomenon for people to experience fame and completely change who they are, and their values and their morals and their ethics, and what boundaries they'll push and how far they'll push those boundaries once the fame sets in. So I believe that they had genuine intentions at times, but I believe that fame was really sparkly, and I believe that they couldn't take their eyes off it.
And so you think that they kind of evolved into,
Yeah.
like, hey, let's do our paranormal investigation and help people, but if we can monetize it as well, then
Yeah, and I think the monetization is what changed it too, because if when I talk to people that experienced Ed and Lorraine in the early days of before they were super famous or super well known, and they have the genuine, wholesome stories, I think what happened was, because I hear this a lot, that once they realized what made money, they stopped caring about investigating, because it came to the point where they'd have a family and this story, and if the story was too good, like too real, too much going on that is genuinely haunting and scary, they don't want nothing to do with it, because that's not as exciting as it is to fake it. And they have these families that have a little bit going on, plus they are kind of into embellishing, like the Glatzels. Judy really latched on to that and like ate it all up and really pushed it. And so I feel like when they realized it was easier to work with people like that and then just build their story how they wanted it, instead of working with people that didn't necessarily fit their mold, if you get what I mean. Like, it was harder on them to work with a family that was dealing with something they couldn't fix or couldn't pinpoint.
Yeah, no, for sure. I agree with that. Now, which case do you think was the one where they got the first taste of like the spotlight or the celebrity kind of treatment?
I would say the Glatzel, because right before that, so everyone says the case that made them famous was the Amityville, even though they didn't work on the case at all. They didn't do any investigating. They're not involved in anything except maybe a mention. I think they're mentioned in the book, but they did that investigation with the news crew after the fact. And that gave them a taste. But I think the Glatzel case really showed them what they could do, because once the murder happened and then the motive became to push this narrative that Arnie was possessed. And we've got to tell the world it wasn't him. He was under possession. He can't be held accountable for this murder. He didn't do it. So they started taking TV shows. And that was the first time they did talk shows to talk about a case. And I think that's when they realized that's where the money is. Because I believe that they initially might have thought they were helping this family until they saw what was going on and how it was going on. And then it became we can manipulate these people super easy.
That's interesting, because you are right. For the most part, the case that catapulted the Warrens into the kind of iconic status that they have right now is the Amityville horror case.
Mm-hmm.
Although after the fact, Annabelle has now kind of been quite associated with them now. But it really wasn't Annabelle that propelled them into the spotlight. Although I do find it interesting that when you did your interview and your investigation, that you found out that the Warrens had actually contacted the newspaper reporter to do a story on Annabelle.
Yep.
So even back then, like, I don't do that. Like, if I, like, well, you know, like, I'm just trying to think of a case that we had where there's something going on that was, you know, paranormal. It's been a while. A lot of times, you know, like, I guess the one that we did last summer with Jody, but it was all subjective evidence, because it's all coming from the media. There was nothing like, you know, no video, no audio, nothing like that. No empirical evidence, as we say in the scientific community. But like, I don't run out to the newspaper and say like, hey, we got this case and there's strange stuff happening.
Yeah.
Do you want to come tag along with us and look for that, you know, notoriety? But it's interesting that back in the Annabelle days, like, that's what they did. They actually called the media and were trying to get them to report on the story. Now,
Mm-hmm.
do you think, so you think it's actually the Glatzel case as opposed to Amityville?
Yeah, I think because Amityville kind of opened the door for them to see how the people took this in, to see what the reaction would be and how people would eat it up and how they would cling to it and want more.
Well, it
And I
had
think
books, it had a movie, like you said, that propelled them into the spotlight.
Mm-hmm.
So they were seeing like, oh, geez, this is what people want.
Yeah, and they were seeing these examples unfold, like the book and then the movie. And then they were like, this is the avenue we want to take. And I feel like it propelled them into seeking cases they could do that with, because they immediately told Judy, we got to write a book. So, like, I feel like that was in the back of their minds all the time. I feel like once they did Amityville and once they realized what kind of involvement they could be in, like the books and the TV and the movies, and right after, like directly after the case, the Arnie Shannon Johnson case, I think even before, either it was right after the verdict was given, they made it made for TV with Kevin Bacon depicting it, and depicting Ed and Lorraine. They just didn't name them. They showed them as investigators, the psychic investigator and her husband. Right. And they just didn't use their names. And I feel like they probably saw that and thought, we need to get in this. Like, if we can start laying claim to these stories, we can start benefiting from the movies, because people want to see the movies. Like, they can see once the movies come out, the reaction the public has to them.
Right. I do remember. I do remember that. Two questions that I have. Hopefully, I remember both of them. One is you and I talked about how good you are at digging up these stories, and we talked about the famous ghost photo that Ed and Lorraine Warren had captured at the Amityville house. And
Yes.
when I did some research, some basic research on it, it appears that the person in the photo, a lot of people say it was an investigator that belonged to Ed and Lorraine Warren. Some people believe it was one of the two DeFeo kids. And I was like, oh, you should track down that investigator and ask him, like, has anyone asked him, is that you in the photograph? And the research I had found is that he's deceased. Were you able to find anything else on that?
I found that too, that he was deceased, and I did a hearsay. I read it somewhere, possibly on Reddit or possibly on a YouTube comment. A lot of people chime in with their firsthand account knowledge from different things, and someone did say that he said, no, that's not me. Like, he was asked and he said, no, that's not me.
Yeah, because that to me would be the first question.
But I don't
like,
have
hey, I want to speak to that investigator. Is that you peering out of the bedroom?
Yeah.
So he allegedly.
Wait, say that again.
So I said that would be my first question to have. Am I still frozen? Oh no. Can you hear me? I don't know if my feed's frozen or not. Can you hear me, Stevie?
It's still frozen.
Oh no. Well, I'm going to keep talking because I'm not sure if it's me or what.
There you are.
I'm back.
What was your question?
No, so sorry. I'm not sure if it's me or not. My feed seems to be it's going okay, so I can't tell if we're freezing or not. My question is that would be my first question I'd want to ask. I'd want to ask that investigator, like, was that you peering out of the bedroom? And you said what you were able to find was kind of third party information that he allegedly was actually interviewed and did say that it wasn't him.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's too bad.
But that's not documented anywhere. It was, I have a screenshot of it somewhere. I'll have to find it, but it might have been a YouTube comment.
Yeah, that's too bad. Because that would really clear that mystery up, because a lot of people talk about that. You know, is it Ed and Lorraine Warren's investigator, or was it one of the DeFeo kids?
And a lot of people believe it was him. That a lot of people have decided for sure it was him.
That's interesting. And it's hard to find a picture of him like at that time too. I don't think I've seen like a comparison. Like, whereas in today's world, you'll see a side by side.
Yeah. I've seen one. There's a photo of them all coming up the stairs, and he's holding his equipment, and you can see he's got the shirt on, the plaid shirt, and he's also wearing glasses, but it's not enough to compare because it's different lighting. It's, it's a different angle.
And they took the photo with the ghost boy in it. They took the photo, I believe, with infrared. I do believe.
I think you might be right.
Yeah, I think it was taken with infrared. Whereas like the other picture that you saw was probably just taken with a regular, probably 35 millimeter.
Right, yeah, just a regular camera.
Yeah. My other question.
Ed said,
go ahead.
I think Ed had an argument that it had to be a ghost because the eyes were glowing, and then the counter argument to that was it was a reflection of the glasses.
I have heard that one too. My other question that I have before I forget it is, what do you think Ed and Lorraine Warren would think today, if they were still alive, the direction that NESPR has gone and what they're doing now?
There's actually a lot of conversations going on online about that. I've seen in several different Facebook posts, because I'm part of different groups where I try to kind of keep up with the way people are feeling about what's going on in the paranormal world, how they feel about the Conjuring franchise, how they feel about Nesper, stuff like that. And there are a lot of people that are really upset and think and highly believe that Ed and Lorraine would also be upset with the fact that the items are being toured now. They don't believe for a second that Ed would approve this. There's a handful of people that say Ed was all about the money, so if that's what it came down to, he'd probably be like, sure, we'll do it. But I believe that because the world is so different now, and the way the internet works and how information is moved the way it is, I don't know if he would have a problem with it if he evolved into it like we all have. But I know if it was 2006 and he was still around, he would not approve at all of these items leaving his museum, because he's always been.
That's the way I feel too. I feel like he wouldn't want all of these items, because at first it started out like even years ago when I attended one of the events. Lorraine was still alive, but she didn't come to the event. But Tony and Judy were there, and they had Annabelle. They had the other kind of black voodoo kind of doll that allegedly has human skin, and I think they had a mirror, like some sort of mirror there. So there was 3 items, but now it's like multiple different items. So I agree with you. I think if Ed was alive today, he would not appreciate like multiple different artifacts being carted all over the country.
Yeah. And I'm not sure how much Ed believed, but I think he believed enough to take it more seriously than it's taken by the current people in Nesper. It seems like, even though he seemed to be after some money and some fame, it seemed like he really believed in demonology and in demonic possession and his fears of like witchcraft and stuff. And it doesn't seem like the current members of Nesper really, like, I've even heard people say Tony doesn't believe, he just pretends to. So that's really frustrating to think that the leader of this organization that's always been about finding the truth in the paranormal and helping people, and he just doesn't care.
Yeah, I agree with you. Actually, it made me, when you said that, it made me think of my organization's motto. So our motto is called "Bringing the Truth to the Light," almost like a play on, moving spirits to the light or whatnot. But we like to, investigate properly, scientifically, and then we bring the truth to the public and let them know, how the investigation went, whether there was something we couldn't explain or whether it was explained by science. But I think that the direction it's gone, I don't think, Ed and Lorraine Warren would be fully on board with how it's going. And I mean, that happens sometimes when management changes or, new people take over. But it's interesting because, like you said, it's a mix of kind of a romantic legacy with, some kind of shady underlying. And then now all of a sudden it's just kind of, monopoly type business now.
Yeah, it's gone off the rails a bit and seems to, the focus landed in, it's almost like it got weaponized. Like the Warrens really wanted the fame, and they really wanted people to get the knowledge, and they wanted to educate. And now it seems like they just want to show off and use it as like they're riding the coattails of the legacy. They don't care about its real history. They don't care about its alleged power. They totally disregard that, and in my opinion, they disrespect it, because the Warrens worked so hard to put these ideas in people's heads, and now it's kind of just silly.
Chris T says, "Hi, Stevie," and hello to me.
Hi.
Hello, Chris T. No, I think that's a very valid point, and yeah, it's sad to see one of the older New England paranormal societies kind of going down that route, but
and there's also a lot of branches off of it. They have the Warrens Foundation now, and there's different chapters, and there's a lot of mudslinging between them too.
Yes,
I
we've talked a bit
yeah.
about that because it appears that the Warren Legacy Foundation is a grandson
Hmm.
of Lorraine.
Yeah, I'm pretty
A-
sure. Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
then it also seems that John Zaffis, who is a member or family member like related
Hmm.
to the Warrens,
He's
has
Ed's
also
nephew.
been like outcasted as
Yes,
well.
yes.
So like you said, you've got NESPR, which is basically run by Tony, Ed's son-in-law, because he's married to Judy, his daughter. Then you've got John Zaffis that kind of does his own demonology thing, and then you've
Hmm.
got the Warren Legacy Foundation. Was there somebody else too that I emailed you about that claimed to be like a descendant or something of the
Yes.
Warrens? Remember I sent you that?
And I've been trying to look into that. He claims to be a distant relative and claims to have some information and stuff. And I'm looking into that. I wanna, because John was asked if that was true, and he said he's asked him for the proof, and he said he's going to get it, but he hasn't provided it yet.
That's wild. I just because like
Yeah.
either one of two things is going to happen with my organization. One day, if I decide to step down or I get ousted by my board of directors, or I just decide to retire. Either one of my daughters may take it over. Probably my youngest daughter. She's really interested in. She's only 4 right now, but she's really interested in ghosts and zombies and witches and all kinds of spooky stuff,
I love that.
which I find is awesome. And then my other daughter, who's 14, has like absolutely no interest in the paranormal. So it's funny that either one or two things will happen. Either somebody in the family will continue it on, or it'll stop with me. Whereas with the Warrens, it's like a mess. It's like you've got all these splinter groups, and they're still active today. And
Hmm.
yeah, it's interesting to kind of see how an organization can change and fluctuate over time.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's bad for the way they go at each other and say each other's lying. Like that's bad for both images.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's very strange, very sad to see. And it lends to the professionalism too. Like it doesn't look professional when all this is going on, and
Hmm.
they like you said, they post things on social media. The only thing we stay fairly professional. There was one time I made an example out of somebody, and it was more for like a learning example, but somebody had made like a really rude comment about our parapsychological education center that we run. So last fall, we decided to open up a online parapsychological education center, and all our courses are based on research and peer-reviewed information and experience and skill sets. And somebody had made a comment about, oh, you don't need any sort of training and all this stuff, and this is all nonsense, and it's fraudulent and all this stuff. So it kind of bothered me, and I was like, you know what? Because I'm not about money and all that stuff. I tell everyone any proceeds that are left over from any event that we do or whatever, I donate all my proceeds from my books into my nonprofit organization. Everything goes into where I'm at, PPRI. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to research this person. So I started researching. I pulled a Stevie. I started researching this person. I found a couple of videos of them on YouTube, and it was funny. They were promoting this product, this ghost hunting product. So I actually said, okay. I said, I've never heard of this product before. So I started looking into the product, and I found out that it's like made in China, and like it's under all these different like weird corporation names. But I actually went and like got the manual, and I read the manual and on how this piece of equipment works, and it was basically junk. And so anyway, I came up with this like really, professional response. And I just said, here you are claiming that you don't need any sort of education in the paranormal, yet here's this video of you promoting this thing, talking about how it's great for capturing ghost evidence and all this stuff when it's actually made by a company in China. And this is what the manual actually says. And, she got super embarrassed, and she actually did write back. It was a mix between being sarcastic, but also I think she realized like she was a little bit embarrassed after I kind of like
Yeah.
called her out on that. But
Mm-hmm.
I only ever did that once, and I did post that it was like for a learning example, like that this is why we teach this kind of stuff, because that's one thing that we
Yeah.
talk about in our courses, is that there is, although there's stuff marketed for ghost hunting, or it'll say ghost detector, there's no such piece of equipment that can detect a ghost.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
not even medical equipment that can tell where human consciousness comes from.
Right. Yeah.
We know that different parts of our brain has to do with consciousnness, but there's no one piece of equipment you can put on somebody's head and like tell exactly where the human consciousness is.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just funny. But some of the stuff that they have put out there, I'm just like, it's
Yeah.
almost like childish, really.
Yeah.
That's the only way to kind of describe it.
It's that whole scamming situation within the paranormal that reminded me when you were talking about the celebrity guests. They've now signed on for Paracon. Did you see that they put the Ryan guy from Penn State? He's gonna be
So
the last
Ryan.
The last we heard of him, he was scamming people.
Yeah, they use so that's the one thing that I thought was really interesting, is a couple years ago when they were still doing the Warren conference, I saw that they had Ryan Buell there, and from Penn State, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. I haven't seen him from his Penn State days. So just a simple Google, and I saw like he was actually charged criminally for a bunch of things. I think he may have had an addiction issue. I think it had mentioned. And I'm like, oh, geez, that's kind of interesting that you're having like that person come speak at your conference. So I had actually reached out and, to Tony. And again, every time I've reached out to him, he reads my messages, but he never responds. But I said, hey, I met you at this event. I said, this is who I am. Here's my biography. Like, I'd love to come speak at the Warren conference about whatever you want. I can talk about law enforcement and the paranormal or parapsychology, whatever you want. Nothing. And then, like I said, I saw that they had that posted there about Ryan, and I'm like, oh my God. I was like, I don't know. Like, you're trying to have a credible, conference, and then you've got somebody that has like you said, fraud charges. Fraud is like the ultimate attack on your credibility. You know what I mean? Like, so yeah, it's I don't know. It's a crazy business. Me a lot. Yeah, it is. Almost that time. Stevie, how can people get in touch with you?
You can find me on all social media. Just search Truth or Demons Podcast. You can also email me at truthordemonspodcast@gmail.com. And I check everything except TikTok. I'm on TikTok, but I'm not good at maintaining. TikTok is intimidating. But like Instagram, Facebook, I'm definitely on those.
I don't know if I follow you on TikTok. I'll have to add you if I don't. But I follow you.
I'll eventually get some stuff up once the YouTube videos are rolling. But right now, it's intimidating.
Yeah, I was like that too. And I had only posted a couple, but now my digital marketing and communications director, Jody, my medium as well. She kind of took over the social media for us for the most part. I do post occasionally, but she pretty much runs it. So she's been doing kind of like little TikTok kind of videos. So that's cool. Well, that's great. The only other announcement I'd like to make is if anyone is interested in doing a supernatural tour to Ireland this fall from September 30th to October 8th, my colleague, Dr. Daryl Walsh, and one of our sponsors from the Halifax Paranormal Symposium, Kathy Harnish, from the Travel Agent Next Door, are putting together a Haunted Ireland tour. You're going to do 2 full night time in paranormal investigations. You're going to investigate with Ireland's paranormal team. You're going to visit Leap Castle. You're going to do some haunted walking tours. You're going to go to Spike Island. You're going to visit Dublin's infamous Hellfire Club. You're going to do some ghost bus tours, all kinds of different things. I think there's catacombs. If anyone's interested in that, you can contact Kathy at charnish@thetravelagentnextdoor.com, or just email me, info@ppri.net, and I can put you in touch with them. But they are trying to get together a crew. I think they need a minimum of 15 people. So if anyone's interested in doing that, Sounds great.
I'm interested in that. I can vouch for those Dublin Ghost Bus tours. They are fun. I lived in Ireland for a little bit, and everything there is just amazing.
No way. Well, my
Yeah.
sister was just over there. She did Scotland and Ireland, and she said the ghost tours, castle tours over there were very, very popular.
Yes.
She didn't do any, but it sounds like, it sounds like a great time.
Yeah, I really enjoyed. We did one bus tour in Dublin, and I thought it was so much fun. They do some random stops, and the bus is really fun. And my favorite stop was they take you to where Bram Stoker lived when he was writing
Oh, that's
Dracula.
cool. Oh, that's really
Yeah.
cool. Oh man, yeah. No, it sounds like an amazing time. If anyone is interested in that, I thought I'd throw that out there. And that's it. That's another episode in the book. So, Stevie, I'll be listening and watching for your latest episodes, and just want to thank you for coming on the show tonight and being a guest.
Thank you so much for having me. I love coming on. It was so much fun.
Awesome. Well, maybe we'll have you on again.
Sounds good.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, that's Science and the Paranormal. We broadcast it live from the United Public Radio Network, UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 and 107.7 FM. Everyone have a great night. See you next week.